Hi everybody, it's time for another 2 chapters of Dinosaurs Before Dark by Mary Pope Osborne. Last time we saw that the 2 kids, Jack and Annie, had climbed up in a strange treehouse, and when Jack opened a book about dinosaurs and said, "I wish I could live in the time of the dinosaurs," all of a sudden they were magically transported back to 65 million years ago. And there was a Pteranodon swooping down, and Annie had just gone down the ladder of the treehouse to meet it. And that's where we are on chapter 4, Henry. Whoever Henry is. Jack gasped as Annie reached out her hand toward the Pteranodon. Oh no, he thought. Annie was always trying to make friends with animals, but this was going too far. "Don't get too close to him, Annie," Jack shouted. But Annie touched the Pteranodon's crest. She stroked his neck. She was even talking to him. What in the world is she saying? Jack wondered. So he took a deep breath. Okay. He would go down too. It would be good to examine a Pteranodon for real up close. He could take notes like a scientist. So Jack started down the rope ladder, and when he reached the ground, he was only a few feet away from the creature, like as close as I am to you right now. Jack stared at the Pteranodon. The Pteranodon stared at Jack. His eyes were bright and alert. "He's soft, Jack," said Annie. "He feels like Henry." Jack snorted. "He's not a dog like Henry, Annie." "Oh, that's who Henry is. Henry is their dog." "Feel him, Jack," said Annie. But Jack didn't move. "Don't think, Jack. Just do it." So Jack stepped forward and he reached out very cautiously. He brushed his hand down the creature's neck. Interesting, Jack thought. A thin layer of fuzz was covering the Pteranodon's skin. "Soft, huh?" said Annie. So Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a pencil and a notebook, and he wrote "fuzzy skin." "What are you doing?" asked Annie. "Taking notes. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live Pteranodon." Jack looked at the Pteranodon again. The bony crest on top of his head was longer than Jack's whole arm. That's pretty long. "I wonder how smart he is," Jack said. "I'm sure he's very smart," Annie said. "Don't count on it," said Jack. "His brain's probably no bigger than a bean." "No, he's very smart. I can feel it," said Annie. "I'm going to call him Henry, just like our dog." Jack wrote down in his notebook, "Small brain? Question mark." Jack looked at the creature again. "Maybe he's a mutant," he said. The Pteranodon tilted his head strangely. Annie laughed. "He's not a mutant, Jack." "Well, what's he doing here then? Where is this place?" said Jack. Annie leaned in close to the Pteranodon. "Do you know where we are, Henry?" The creature fixed its eyes on Annie. His long jaws were opening and closing like a giant pair of scissors. "Are you trying to talk to me, Henry?" asked Annie. "Forget it, Annie." And Jack just wrote in his notebook, "Mouth like scissors." Did we come to a time long ago, Henry?" asked Annie. "Is this a place from long ago?" Suddenly Annie gasped, "Jack!" Jack looked up. Annie was pointing toward the hill. On top stood a huge dinosaur. Do you know what dinosaur that is? Chapter 5. Gold in the Grass. Gold? Go, go, said Jack. He threw his notebook into his pack and he pushed Annie towards the rope ladder. Bye, Henry, she said. Go, said Jack. He gave Annie another push. Quit it, she said. But she did start up the rope ladder, and Jack scrambled after her. Jack and Annie tumbled into the treehouse, and they were panting as they looked out the window at the dinosaur. It was standing on the hilltop, eating flowers off of the tree. Oh, man, whispered Jack, we are in a long time ago. The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros with 3 horns instead of 1. Do you know what that's called? It had 2 long horns above its eyes, and another one grew out of its nose. It had a big shield-like thing on the top of its head. Triceratops, Jack said. That's the Triceratops. Does he eat people? Annie said. I'll look it up. Jack grabbed the dinosaur book and flipped through the pages. Oh, there, said Jack, pointing to a picture of the Triceratops, and he read the caption. The Triceratops lived in the late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. Jack slammed the book shut. Just plants, no meat. Good, said Annie. Let's go see him up close. Are you crazy? Said Jack. Don't you want to take notes about him, you note-taker? Said Annie. We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real live Triceratops. Jack sighed. Annie was right. Okay, let's go, he said. Jack shoved the dinosaur book into his pack, and he slung his pack over his shoulder. Annie started down the ladder first, just like always, and Jack followed her. Just promise you won't pet him, Jack called down to Annie. I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't kiss him? I promise, said Annie. Promise you won't talk to him? I promise. Promise you won't. Don't worry, said Annie. Annie and Jack stepped off the ladder. The Pteranodon gave them a friendly look. I wonder how a Pteranodon looks friendly. Annie blew him a kiss. Be back soon, Henry, she called. Shh, said Jack, and he led the way slowly and carefully through the ferns. When Jack and Annie reached the bottom of the hill, they knelt behind a bush. Annie started to speak, but Jack quickly put his finger up to his lips. Hip and lip, shh. Then he and Annie peeked out at the Triceratops. The dinosaur was bigger than a truck. He was eating the flowers off a magnolia tree. Jack slipped his notebook out of his pack and he wrote, "Eats flowers." Annie nudged him. Jack ignored her. He studied the Triceratops again, and he wrote, "Eats slowly." Annie nudged him harder. Jack finally looked at her, and Annie pointed to herself, and she pointed to the dinosaur, and she smiled. Is she teasing? Jack wondered. Annie waved at Jack. Jack started to grab her, but she just laughed and jumped away, and she fell into the grass in full view of the Triceratops. "Get back," whispered Jack. But it was too late. The dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of a magnolia flower was sticking out of his mouth. "Oops," said Annie. "Get back," Jack said again. "He looks nice, Jack," Annie said. "Nice? Watch out for his horns." The Triceratops gazed calmly down at Annie, and then he turned and loped down the other side of the hill. "Bye," said Annie. She turned to look back at Jack. "See?" Jack grunted. But he wrote in his notebook, "Nice." "Come on, let's look around some more," said Annie. As Jack started after Annie, he saw something glittering in the grass. Jack reached down and picked it up. It was a gold medallion. There goes that stegosaur going down that, or the Triceratops going down the other side. A letter was engraved on the medallion, a fancy letter M. M for Mr. Baker, right? No. A fancy letter M on the medallion. "Oh man, somebody was here before us," Jack said softly. "I wonder who was there. I wonder if it's somebody who's stuck there still." We'll have to wait to find out. Tomorrow, we'll read Chapter 6, Dinosaur Valley. See you then.